Hello there guys, welcome to Skater XL. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about this game. I want to explain the reasons why you might absolutely hate this on day one and the reason that my first look video was incredibly disappointing. But I reckon by about day 3, if you stick by it, you'll love it and you'll be having a hell of a lot of fun. I have more fun on here than I do on session, so I actually prefer playing this game to session, and I want to talk about the reason that is. And I'm hoping that the people that kind of like downloaded this the other day when it hit the Xbox store, you come in here with really high expectations and all excited like I did, and you were disappointed and you was thinking, I kind of want a refund, this is gash. This video is aimed at you guys because I want to point out a few things that hopefully are going to get you to enjoy the game, because I really enjoy it. But on the first day I bloody didn't. I was thinking, what is this? What are they playing at? So there are quite a few reasons why I thought that. I'm going to be talking about a few of them. I am going to be comparing this game to Session, obviously. It's the closest thing out there to this game. I'm also going to be comparing it to EA Skate because it's a skateboarding game. And I'm going to be talking about what happens when you come into this game for the first time, depending on where you came from. We're not talking about the PC version, we're not talking about any mods on this or Session or anything else. We're only talking about what's available for people who are playing on Xbox. And that's the same for EA Skate, for this and for Session. It's just what you can play on your Xbox. So anyway, I do now really like this. I now enjoy this more than Session. But I do know it's got problems. I know it's got faults. There are some things that I can just, kind of turn a blind eye to them and ignore them. There are other things that I think are really quite bad. I'm going to talk about all those things, but taking all of those things into consideration, this is much more fun. And I'll be saying why. But before we get into all of that, I'll have a little bit of my coffee. And I'll also say I'm sorry about my voice. Right, with decorating, and I've just painted this, I painted the room yesterday. It still stinks of paint in here. But there's no soft furnishings in here or anything, so it's just a big empty box. So I know my voice is a bit echoey, so I apologise for the terrible sound of this video. Just bear with it. And also, as usual, there's a shitload of traffic outside and stuff like that. Right, first of all, we're going to talk about what happens if you come from EA Skate and you come on this. Pushing Session aside for a bit, pretend you don't even know that exists, and you've played EA Skate, you come onto this game, and on day one, you're thinking this is bloody awful. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one, the most important one, is that the way this game works, the control system is really, really different to EA Skate, and it's very difficult to get the hang of the controls at the beginning. It takes you quite a few hours just to get your head into this new control system and away from what EA Skate is. But I'll tell you what, you persevere with it, and once you've got the hang of these controls, you'll absolutely love them, because they are so much more like real skateboarding. They really are. And it kind of feels like you're properly skateboarding when you use the controls that this has got compared to EA Skate. Now the big difference, of course, is my blue stick on my little controller, this one here, that operates my blue foot, which in this case is my front foot, my left foot, and the red stick's my red foot. Now this is left and right foot. It's not front and back, it's left and right. Because if I turn around the other way, then that front and back will switch over. It's left and right. Now obviously that means that we can't use the left stick for steering. So to do that, we're using the trigger buttons. Getting your brain to accept that you've got to press the trigger buttons to turn your skater instead of the left stick is the hardest part of this learning curve if you've come from EA Skate. But it takes a while. Usually when you fall off, you get back up and you immediately try and use the left stick, and it's really bloody frustrating. But if you stick with it, within a couple of days of playing this game for a few hours, or Session for a few hours, you're going to get the hang of it. And when you do, it'll feel really bloody good. Especially if you skate or if you snowboard in real life, because the mechanics of turning on a skateboard and a snowboard are just the same. You put pressure down on your toes, or you put pressure down on your heels, and it just turns your board one way or the other. Now that idea of putting that pressure down, the best way of representing that on a controller is these trigger buttons. It absolutely is. And I'll tell you what, when you get used to it, it feels really nice. Just to turn like this or turn like this, it feels right. but it'll take you a little while to get used to it. So your biggest stumbling block coming from EA Skate is going to be these controls. You get used to them, it's going to take you a few hours, it's going to be frustrating, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to think it's horrible. Stick with it. As soon as it clicks, and it will click, it won't take long, and when it does click, you'll love this, and you'll think this is a lot better than EA Skate, especially if you are a skater in real life. I mean, I am a skater, so I can't really say what it's like for people that have never skated before, because I haven't got that experience. So that's the controls. It's just a matter of you've got to teach your muscle memory something new. So you'll get the hang of that. So if that's your gripe, just don't worry about that at all, because that's something that will be sorted. And once it's sorted, you'll prefer this. And I don't think anybody at all that has taken the time to learn the controls in this game or session has said, I still prefer the EA Skate things. I've never seen someone say that comment, and I don't think anybody would. It's just it just feels really fucking nice. So that aside, the other things that are going to happen, you get into this game, and when you first get in here, the physics of the skateboarding is not the thing that grabs your attention first. All right, first of all, you don't know what the physics are like because you're messing up the controls. But what gets your attention first of all is just the way the game looks. And there are things about this game that look fucking awful. So you get in here and you feel a bit disappointed because you arrive in the game expecting it to look really beautiful, and it doesn't. It looks like an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 2 or 3 game. And there's a couple of things I do want to point out, and I know that people are going to say these things are not important, but when you first arrive on this game with no experience of it whatsoever, you've not been following the development, you get in here and you cannot help but notice that the graphics are shit, right? A couple of things that really will stand out to you are things like these windows. All the windows on this game are just opaque grey squares. There's no reflection. It looks bloody awful. The other thing you're going to notice, if you ever go near a car, you'll notice that the wheels on the car are not three-dimensional models. It's just a flat, crappy, pixelated two-dimensional image. It looks fucking terrible. It absolutely looks terrible. And that's a real shame. Now, a lot of people, when I mentioned that in my first look video, a lot of people said, that don't matter, it's about the skateboarding. It matters to me, I like nice graphics. I'd much prefer this game to have nice graphics. People also said it's a small studio without much money. That's no excuse at all. The people who are making Session is a smaller studio. They've got reflective windows and they've got three-dimensional models instead of a two-dimensional image. So those things really, really are terrible. But I've got to be honest, after a couple of days of playing this, you're so focused on the actual skateboarding that you don't notice all this stuff. But I would still much prefer that the environment looked good. Now, one of the maps looks a lot better than the rest of them, and that is this. The California Skate Park one by far looks the nicest. And it's like the sun is quite low down in the sky on this map, and it gives you some reflections off the surface. Now as well, there's not really loads of cars knocking around in this map or anything. It just looks like they've spent a lot more time on this one. It just looks a lot better. So I'd recommend that you just go straight to this map at the beginning, because if eye candy is something that's important to you, it's much prettier in here than it is anywhere else. And if I can just get the sun in the right position, you'll see what I mean. I mean, look at the sun shining off the ground. That's nice. It's just nice. But it doesn't. You don't really see that so much on some of the other maps. This is a really beautiful map as well. There's a lot of nice lines that you can do in here. It's one of my favourite maps. But it's the most attractive one. It's not on par with other games at all. It's still got a few problems, but it's certainly the best one on this game. And if this were the one I landed in when I first booted up the game, I probably wouldn't have even noticed that the graphics ain't up to the standard of other games that we can buy at the moment, because in here it looks pretty good. Gotta be fair, it looks pretty good. I mean, it's not great, but it does look pretty good. So, the graphics, I've got to say, I really, really think, all the way across the board, all these things I'm going to point out, I really think that they shouldn't have released the game at 1.0 ready for people to buy in the store. They should have released the game as a work in progress and said to us, look, you can buy it if you want. There's no guarantee that you're going to like it. It's probably got some faults. It's a work in progress, but it's up to you guys. Just our session did. They should have given us a little bit of a demo for a couple of hours and then said, if you actually want to buy it in the condition it's in now, then give us some of your money. I would have done. I'd have absolutely bought it, and I would have come in here and I'd have done a first look video, and I'd have been pretty impressed, because all those little things that aren't right, I'd have forgiven them, because it would have been a work in progress. They would have got a load of money doing that, and then they could have spent that money on a little bit of digital polish, you know? It's very apparent that the problems in this game that are things like the low quality of the graphics, that's all down to money. You spend a little bit more money and you can get a nicer environment. It's just down to the development team spending money. It's nothing to do with them being a small dev team, because other small dev teams, they do it. It's to do really with how important the dev team think it is. If it ain't important to them, it's not something that they're spending their time and the money on. Obviously, having reflective windows weren't important to the people that made this game, but it would make it look nicer. It really would. For anyone who plays it, even if you're not giving them any attention, being in an environment in the game where the graphics are better, they'd look nicer. And I think everybody can agree that it just would. I mean, this, if the trees moved a little bit with a bit of wind, it would look nicer. It's not important, it's really not important, but it'd just look a little bit more polished, a little bit nicer. And if you want to put these things in your game, you got to spend a little bit more money. But this level, of all the levels in the game, this one looks the best. And it does look pretty bloody nice, don't it? I like when the sun shines off the tarmac. I like the big long shadows because the sun being low in the sky. I love this pink the pink tarmac that's around the park. It's all right. This is lovely. They definitely should have put you in this one at the beginning. And it's like your first impression of the game, which is important, would have been all right. So, I mean, we've talked about the graphics. When you first arrive on the game and you land in the map, you are going to notice that the graphics are not good. You're going to notice that, and it's going to disappoint you a little bit. You haven't played it yet. You haven't got used to the controls yet. You haven't been focused on the physics of skateboarding yet. You just plonk yourself in the map. The game loads up. You look at your telly and you're like, hang on a minute. This looks a bit like an Xbox 360 game. That's a bit shit. That's what you're going to think. And that gives you a sense of disappointment because you were expecting something a bit better. So, where is Moscato? Well, no, Moscato's not anywhere, is he? So yeah, if you've come from EA Skate, there are a couple of things that are going to be gripes. The controls are going to be difficult. The graphics ain't going to be what you kind of hoped they would be. And another thing as well, if you've come from EA Skate or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, once you've got used to this and you've skated around for a bit, you'll think, there isn't anything to do. There really isn't. There's no challenges and things. Well, there are some challenges actually. That's in here. There's a couple of challenges. But hey, oh, what happened there? Has it crashed? Oh bollocks! It's crashed. Oh, there it goes. There. Okay, we're fine. Right. There's no story mode, there's no multiplayer, there's no NPCs, there's nothing else moving at all. A couple of people have commented saying it feels like I'm playing a skateboard game after the Rapture and I'm the only person on Earth. People have said, what am I doing here? I've paid 35 quid for a free roam and there's nothing to do. And then other people have said that's not what the game is about. It's about the physics of skateboarding. It's about doing a line, videoing the line and looking at it afterwards. That's the focus of the game. But the game does feel incredibly empty if you're used to something that is very arcadey, like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or like Skate. But that's not what the game is trying to be. But when you first land in here and you realise, hang on a minute, there's absolutely nothing to do, to a lot of people that is also a disappointment. I don't mind that because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's a good skateboard simulator. I can do a lovely line and I can video it. That's what I'm interested in. So for me, this and Session, it ticks those boxes because that's all I want. I don't want pedestrians getting in the way. I really don't. So I'm not interested in any of that. This does the things I want. Session does the things I want. Skate was great, but there's a lot of bells and whistles and nonsense in there that I ain't that bothered about. I'll tell you what I did like on Skate, which isn't in this or Session, but I really liked it. It was a nice little touch. I liked it when you broke a bone and it showed you like the broken bone on the skeleton. I really liked that. I've broken 11 bones and it's like, I've broken a lot of bones skateboarding, doing other stupid things, but I liked that. I really liked it. It was kind of one of those just a little tiny thing that it was like, I didn't expect it to be in a skateboarding game, but when it was in there and I saw it, I kind of really liked that. I would like to see that in here, but we don't want to break bones, do we? We want to do good tricks and get good videos. So anyway, that's pretty much all I've got to say. If you've come over from EA Skate and you've come into this game, the controls are going to be hard, you've got to learn them. The graphics ain't going to be that great, but once you've got focused on the game and the skateboarding, you really ain't going to notice. But it'd still be a lot better if they were nice, wouldn't it? If the graphics were lovely, of course it would be better. That applies to every single game ever. The better the graphics are, the better it is. But it is forgivable if the graphics ain't great, because your focus becomes so much on skateboarding that you don't mind. Now, if you've come over from Session, there's a few more things that you've got to think about. Session has that dual stick, one stick, one foot, one stick, the other foot, as well as this game. It's not exactly the same. There are fundamental ways that these games are different in their controls, but they're similar enough for you to come off Session onto this and to be able to jump right into skateboarding and do a line. But if you come from Session into this game, there are things in this game that are not quite right, that when you've been on Session, they really stand out. And the big one, the really big one, is the gravity, right? I did a first look video on this. I did a first look video on Session. Now, a first look video, it ain't like a review, really. It's like an unboxing. It's like, I ain't played this game yet. I'm booting the game up, I stick my capture card on, and I'm going to have my first experience of the game. It's going to be my honest opinion of what I think, just getting in there. If it pleases me, you'll obviously know it pleases me. I'll be excited. If you see my emotions, if it's disappointing, you're going to tell that I'm disappointed. And in this situation, I was disappointed. I didn't want to be disappointed. I wanted to like it. I'd seen a bit about the game before it came out. I was really bloody excited about it. Every single day for about a month, I've been going into the coming soon because I wanted to pre-order it. It never came on pre-order. It didn't actually come into the store at all until the day of release for actual purchase. But I kept going in there. Originally, it was supposed to come out on the 7th of July on Xbox, and it got pushed back to the 28th. So I was gutted on the 7th of July when it wasn't in the store. Every day I looked for pre-order. So I was bloody excited about this game. I was very, very excited about it arriving. So I boot it up. I start my capture card. I haven't seen the game at all yet. And I have that kind of like unboxing experience with you guys, with whatever emotion comes while I'm experiencing the game. My first reaction was, it looks like I'm on an Xbox 360 game. And that disappointed me a bit, but I tried to push it aside. In fact, if you watch that video, you'll see that at the beginning, I'm kind of playing it a little bit, and I'm sort of saying, oh, this ain't quite right, but let's carry on. And then I'm like, this ain't quite right, but I'll carry on. And then after a while, all the things that weren't quite right built up to a point where I was like, I feel like I've been ripped off. I feel like I want a refund. I feel really frustrated and disappointed that this game is shit. That's how I felt, and that was really disappointing. Now, by day 3 of having this game, I really like it. I find this game a lot more fun than Session. If I'm booting it my Xbox just to have a little bit of a crack on a skateboarding game, this is my go-to, not Session. And I'm going to cover why that is. And naturally, the reasons why this is my go-to and this is more fun is because this is a bit more arcadey. It isn't an accurate simulation. Session's much more accurate in a lot of ways. I'm not saying it's more accurate in every single way. I'm not saying that the character animation when I do a trick looks better in here than it does on Session because they've spent a bit more time polishing that. But Session, we know that towards the end of this year, they're bringing out a new update on Session. It ain't ready yet. It's a preview game, and there are things that we know are going to be improved. But there's also things on Session right now that are different to this game in a good way that makes Session more realistic and this game a little bit arcadey. And those differences mean that this game is a lot more fun. Those differences, I'm going to talk about the actual differences in a minute, but those differences mean that that Session is much more difficult. It's really frustrating. It's bloody hard to do a line that's any longer than about 3 tricks. But when you do one, it is quite rewarding, but it's really fucking hard work, it really is. And in this game, it's not hard work at all. As soon as you've got the hang of the controls, you can sort of skate around for as long as you want, popping amazing tricks over obstacles, and it's very accessible. It's very, very beginner friendly once you've got your head around this idea of the control system, especially this and this, the turning, that's the big one. That's the one you're going to have the most trouble with. But once all that clicks, this game's very, very, very easy to play, and it's very easy to do a line. It looks good, it feels good, and it's very simple. It's a little bit arcadey in that respect. Whereas on session, it's bloody hard to do a line. It still looks good, it still feels good. In fact, it feels a lot better because it's more rewarding, because it's much more difficult. So anyway, I want to talk about a couple of reasons as to why that is. I'm not going to go into these in depth because I've talked about them on the video I loaded up where I said the controls are not the same between session and this. So the first thing that I want to say to the people that come from session, so imagine you downloaded session on preview, you played it for a while because it was available before this came out on the Xbox, you haven't seen it on PC, you've got no mods, and you downloaded this a couple of days ago when it hit the store. You came in here, your immediate reaction was the graphics are a bit crap, because the graphics on session are better, the environments look better. So that was your immediate reaction, but you then thought, let's not worry about that, let's focus on the skateboarding. You started to skateboard, you did a few tricks, and you were like, what the fuck is going on? Why am I floating all over the place? Now, when I did my first look video on session and I started doing a bit of skateboarding, I didn't think about the gravity at all because it's just right. I didn't think I'm too floaty, it feels like a bit arcadey. I didn't think it's too difficult to do tricks because the gravity's too harsh, it's too heavy. It felt like I was connecting with obstacles. It felt like my grind was actually locked in and my slides and things. It absolutely felt the way skateboarding would feel. It did, it really did. And I quite often notice this on car racing games as well. Sometimes it feels like driving a car and you just don't give it a second thought because it feels normal. And then you'll jump into another game and it feels like your car doesn't really weigh anything. And it's really, really bloody obvious. It really sticks out because it's not right. When a game is right, you don't notice it. When a game is not right, you notice it a lot. So I got in session, I did I think the first thing I did was, I talked through the controls a bit, and then I did a nose slide on a ledge. And it felt exactly like doing a nose slide on a ledge in real life. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. I loved it, right? That was my first look experience of session. The gravity felt right. I did a few tricks that felt exactly like I would have expected them to. I came in here and I did a few tricks and I was like, what's going on? I don't feel like I'm in contact with things. It doesn't feel like my skateboard's properly, it doesn't feel like there's any weight. It feels like my skateboard is really, really floaty. I feel like I'm made of helium. That's how it felt. Now, on my first look video, I didn't really go on the big ramp much, but when I went on the big ramp, the floating is unbelievable. It's nowhere near Earth gravity. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, when you come from session to this, that floatiness that isn't quite right is so apparent to you on absolutely everything that you do. And for that reason, everything feels shit. Everything feels wrong, and you are disappointed. You just go and kickflip over something, and you're like, what the fuck was that? Why did I go floating right up in the air? Because you're used to a game that is replicating the way skateboarding feels like in real life with normal gravity. When you do the tricks on session, you don't even notice the gravity because it's right. But when you do the tricks in here, you really notice the gravity because it's way off. It's way off. It's really, really floaty. That said, when you've been on air for a few hours, you absolutely get used to it, okay? And you actually start to like it, and it gets to a point where you don't notice it. You don't notice that you're a bit floaty. You don't notice that you seem to have quite a lot of time to do your tricks because gravity isn't exactly Earth gravity. You're spending too long in the air. You don't notice that. It just all feels right. It feels all right. You go back over the session and you're like, oh my God, this is hard. I can't do anything. It's really, really difficult. Because on that game, you've got to struggle with the gravity being very, very realistic. And you've been on air, it's been a bit floaty, and it's given you a lot of time to be able to get your tricks. It's nice and simple, nice and easy. You go over to there, and all of a sudden, it's really bloody hard. The transition from this to session is a very difficult one. The transition from session to this, it's an incredibly easy one, but it makes you feel like you're playing a shit game because there are things on this that you just think, that ain't right. But when you adjust to those things, or you just accept them and you get used to them, it doesn't matter that those things aren't right, because the game still feels fun. And this is what I'm saying, for people that came on here and you didn't like it for whatever reason, if you stick with it, I'll tell you, you'll absolutely love this game in a few days, and it'll probably be your go-to, even if you was a diehard, session fan. It's like, you'll get in here, you'll just think, this gravity is fucking diabolical, I'm floating all over the place, it's crazy, stick with it. A couple of days later, you'll just think, that felt good, everything you do, it'll feel good. The gravity's still wrong, but it's not ridiculous. I mean, right, Tony Hawk's gravity is absolutely insane, okay? It's not trying to be a skateboard simulator, it's a very arcadey game. The gravity is ridiculous, it's nothing like Earth gravity, but when you do tricks and everything, it's fun and it feels good. You don't do a trick on Tony Hawk's and say, that wasn't much fun and that didn't feel very good because it's way too floating. I've done outlandish tricks that I couldn't do in real life. You still have fun playing it. It still feels good. You get used to that crazy gravity really, really, really bloody quickly, and you just play the game the way it is. This is exactly the same. You get used to the floaty gravity, you play the game the way it is, it feels good very quickly, and it's a lot of fun very quickly. The gravity is still wrong, but it feels good, and you do get to a point where you get used to it. That doesn't mean it's right. It's not right. It's too floaty, but it does feel good. So stick with it to the point where it starts to feel good, and you'll be very glad that you did, because you'll feel like you ain't wasted 35 quid. You'll really enjoy it. So then you'll notice the ollies, okay? On session, to do an ollie, you pull down on your back foot to prepare, you push up on your front foot to do your ollie. So you can see the controller, down on back foot, up on front foot to do an ollie. Now on session, it's a bit like real life. If you're going to do an ollie in real life and you're approaching an obstacle, you actually compress your back foot a little bit before you get there. You do a little bit of rolling along in kind of like preparation stance, like that, okay? You get yourself like that just before you get to the obstacle. You don't do that movement as you're about to ollie. You don't go back foot, front foot, like that. You don't do this, okay? You don't do that in skateboarding, like really quick. You prepare, then you do your trick. And when you're doing that bit in real life, it's like all the energy of your body gets compressed like a spring into your back leg. That's what you do. It's like you coil up a spring and you get that energy ready to explode. That's kind of how you get your... I can do really fucking high ollies. I can ollie way over waist height quite easily. But I'm standing still, I can. Going along, I'm not quite so good. But the way I ollie, and I think the way all skateboarders ollie, is you compress like coiling up a spring in your back leg, and it feels like you're pushing a lot of energy. I do a lot of martial arts, so I do a lot of Tai Chi and that sort of stuff, and I do a lot of moving energy around my body. When I skateboard, I also use that same kind of idea of putting the energy into a place, so I can kind of like build that energy up and then use it to fire it out of my foot. Like it's like an explosion. That's sort of how it works. That's why my ollies are high. And it's like you kind of compress and you coil up this spring on your back leg, but that takes a little bit of time. And then when you're right at the point where you need to do the ollie, you explode that energy out of your foot, comes out the balls of your foot, and your leg, the spring sort of uncoils, and as that happens, you bang your tail on the floor, and that's what gets you your pop. At that point, your board is starting to go nose upwards, and then you bring your front foot forward to level the nose out, and that brings the back of the board up. So what happens then is your board levels off and it starts to float upwards, level, and your ollie goes up. That's how an ollie works. So you can see this happening here, like that. In fact, I don't think you actually, the tail does hit the floor, but you see it there. It's like you compress, we've coiled up the spring, we've got all that energy in our back leg. I mean, for me, the energy goes into my thigh of my back leg. It's kind of like all around my hip and my thigh thing, and I start my ollie from there. It's like my ollie doesn't start in my foot, my ollie starts in my hip and my thigh. And it's a bit like when you punch. It's like your punch don't start in your fist. It's like your punch starts in your waist. And it's like, it starts underground. It's like when you do martial arts, your punch starts underground and it comes up through your stance. It goes through your waist, it comes along your shoulder, it goes down your arm, then it comes out your fist. That's the way a punch works. Now, someone who doesn't do martial arts, they don't do that. Their punch starts in their fist and it's going to be quite weak. But it's the same with skateboarding, it really is. If you've never done martial arts and you do skateboarding, I'll tell you what, if you went and did Tai Chi or something like that, it'd really bloody out your skateboarding. It was. When you get the energy movement, when you first begin, you just have to imagine it and you can't feel anything. But after a short amount of time, you can feel that energy in your body. In fact, there is a way that you can actually measure that energy in your body. There are like scientific instruments that will be able to tell you, yeah, you've built up a lot of energy. It is measurable. But more than that, you can build it up yourself and another person can feel it. So I can build that up in my hands and I can put my hands on another person and they can feel it. It feels a bit like when you put the same pole of two magnets together and there's a little bit of resistance. That's the energy I'm talking about. And this is something that I assume a lot of skateboarders haven't got, they've never even considered all of this stuff. It's much more a martial arts thing, but it really bloody helps skateboarding. It really does. So if you are a skater, I'll tell you what, if you kind of bring a little bit of the elements of the energy in martial arts, especially Tai Chi or Qigong, you bring that into your skateboarding, you'll see a massive improvement, especially more than anything else, in the height of your ollies. So it really helps you improve. So I definitely recommend you do that. But yeah, that compression is where you get that energy and it's going on in your hip at the moment. And then when you get to the point where you're going to pop, you sort of explode that out through your foot, through your board, into the floor. You push it down under the floor. The energy doesn't stop on the ground, it goes underground. That gives you a massive amount of pop and then you kind of like straighten up your front foot and your board lifts into the air. On the session, you have to do that. You compress and then you do your front foot to straighten up. Now in real life, depending on the quality of your compression and depending on what you do with your front foot, you're either going to do a good or a bad ollie. In session, the same thing happens, depending on how quickly you push that stick down, how far you push it down, and also how long you've got the stick down for, and also the same thing with the stick that goes up, depending on how fast you push it, how far you push it, and all that kind of stuff, will make a difference to the quality of your ollie in session. So when you're approaching an obstacle in session, in order to do a trick, to get onto the obstacle, you've got to do a good ollie. If you don't do a good ollie, you're going to fall off. So it's really quite challenging and difficult, but in that respect, it's very, very similar to simulating the way that you need to use your feet in real life. If you do shit input in real life, you get shit output. You do shit things with your feet, you get shit results from your board. You'll do a crap ollie. Same thing in session. You do shitty things on the sticks, you're going to have a shit result on your board on the game. That's just the way it is, which is quite nice because that's like real skateboarding, but it makes the game really, really hard, and it makes it a little bit frustrating because you fall off a lot, and it means that when you're trying to do a line, you manage probably about 3 or 4 tricks and then you're probably going to fall over, but it's really rewarding when you get it right. Now this game is not like that. This game by comparison is incredibly arcadey. Because if I want to do an ollie on this game, I haven't got to worry about my compression at all. I don't have to worry about when I put my stick down, how far, how fast. I haven't got to worry about any of that stuff. And I also haven't got to worry about my front foot. What's up?
Before I do the lunch, if you want?
No, after the video. Right. Okay, I'll have it in a bit. Thanks. That's not closed. No, it is. Right, when you... In real life, you've got to think about all that stuff. On this game, none of those things are very important. They matter and they do make a difference, but that difference is minimal. On session, that difference is massive. If you have crap input on session, you're going to do a shit trick, and you've got to get good input to do a good trick. And the margin of error there is enormous, okay? It's very easy to fuck up your trick on session. On this game, it's pretty much the opposite. It's a piece of piss to do a really impressive trick, and it's actually quite difficult to mess it up. And I want to show you what I mean by that. First of all, when we compress really don't matter. As long as we get some compression in before we're going to jump, it can be a split second and it'll be enough. So I can just drag down on the stick and let it go, and that'll be enough, like that. Just bang, just drag down and let it go, and I'll do a big ollie. Now the other thing you might have noticed here is I didn't do anything with my front foot. Now that's not real at all. In real life skateboarding, you've got to use both feet to do an ollie. You have to do this. That's how you do an ollie. Back foot down, and as you let it go, you pop and you put your front foot up. There's a slight delay between the two. It's more like that, really, a real ollie. And that's what you've got to do in session. This game allows you to do an ollie and completely ignore your front foot. That makes it incredibly easy to pop an ollie when there's an obstacle coming up at you pretty quick. You're doing a line, you've just landed, you've got another obstacle right there, and you just bang, and you do an ollie and you're up on the obstacle. In session, you probably would fuck up that trick and fall off because you've just landed from the first one, you've got to do this to get the second one, but you've got to compress for a bit and hold it down for a bit before you pop. Otherwise, you're just going to crash. The other thing in this game as well, which makes it very, very accessible for beginners once you've learnt the controls, is this game has an option to do a high ollie, which is a really, really nice ollie. And the way you do it is to pull down on both sticks. So you see how I adjust my front foot as well? It comes back a little bit, and then I do a high ollie. Now I don't need to do any pushing forward. I'm just going to take my thumbs off the sticks, and I'll do a high ollie. That's bloody lovely. And I can do that just as fast as I did the normal ollie. Bang, like that. So if I'm approaching a big obstacle, there's nothing I've got to do that's very difficult. I just go bang, and I'm up there doing a big obstacle. Now on session, that's not possible at all. So it means that when you're approaching a big obstacle on session, if you haven't prepared yourself, you're not going to be able to get over it. And if you don't do a good input at the point where you're going to do your trick to get over it, you're just going to hit it and fall off. Now, when we come to things like flips and stuff, both games are the same. You've got to prepare your back foot, you've got to do something with your front foot to do a flip. It's just exactly the same, right? Depending on what flip you want to do and all that stuff. Both games work the same as that. But if you're in a situation where you're doing a line on this game and there's some obstacles coming up quick, you haven't got to worry about your front foot. It's just bang, bang, and you just pop in ollies or really big ollies, and they're fine. I mean, this, just bang down, let them go, nice and quick and easy, no holding it down, just preparation, right, like that, just bang, as soon as you get there, that gets you over a picnic table. That's incredible. On session, you've really got to work to ollie over something the size of a picnic table. It is not bloody easy at all. So, because of those reasons, it makes this game a little bit arcadey, and no one can really argue with that. I know you want it to be a skate simulator. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I actually prefer playing this to session, but it does make it a little bit arcadey. That makes it very accessible to a beginner once you've learnt the controls. But in real life, you can't do this. That's not simulating skateboarding in any way whatsoever. I can't just put my back foot into an ollie position and pop an ollie. It's not possible. So this is not simulating an ollie. It's giving you a good quality ollie with a very easy input. Now, I did talk about this next thing as well on the other video. This is something that I think this game does a lot better than Session. I much prefer the way this game does it. I really hope that Session really think about this and change over to the way this game is. And it's to do with switch stance. Right, someone left a comment saying you can't even do reverts. You know, why are you leaving a review? I mean, it weren't a review, it was just a first look. But no, I can't do reverts. I've got no fucking idea how to do a revert on this game. And if I go in here and go to tutorial, it doesn't even tell me how to do a revert. I haven't got a clue how to do a revert in here. I'm probably going to discover it. It's probably in one of these challenge things, or one of the ones I ain't done. I've done quite a few of them. It's probably in one of the ones I ain't done yet. It might have been in here. Oh, come on. Oh, it's fucked up again. We just have to wait. It might be in here. Shifty's going, no, it's not. But I didn't even know you could do reverts in this game because it doesn't tell me I can do them. It might be hidden away somewhere, but it's not somewhere where I can just press start and go into menu and say, give me a trick list and see what it is. Now on Session, you can do that. All the tricks you can do in the game, it tells you them. When you pause the game and have a look, it tells you. So on Session, it tells me that if I double tap a trigger button, I'll do a revert. Now someone complained saying the reverts in Session are terrible. They're actually adjustable. You can turn them on or off. You can change them to automatic, so it does a revert if you were going to bail. You can change them to always do a revert when you land, so you're never in, you're always skating regular stance. Or you can change how fast you have to press the button to do the revert. So it's a double tap to do the revert on either of the triggers. But that's also turning your skateboard. So you can turn that double tap up or down. So you have to tap really fast, and you're not really going to do one by accident. Or you can turn it down, so you can tap really slow, and it's going to be easy to do the revert, but you've got to be careful not to do one by accident when you're turning. It's very customizable. So if I want to switch to switch stance in session, I just double tap the controller and it'll do a revert. I don't know how to do a revert in here, but I assume they exist because someone said you don't even know how to do reverts. Yeah, because the game's not told me how to do them. I've tried moving the controls in different ways to see whether a revert happens, and so far it hasn't. So if I want to switch over to the other stance, I've got to do a 180 ollie like that, and now it'll switch over to switch stance. But yeah, I've got no idea how you do revert. If somebody wants to tell me, by all means leave a note in the comments. But I'm a little bit annoyed because I find reverts very important and very useful because I don't like standing goofy. I don't like skating switch. I'd much rather just skate regular. So every time I land in switch, I want to do a revert and go back around the other way. So on this game, I'm just doing like a backside 180 or something every time I happen to be in this stance. I wished it told me in the menu. I don't see why it doesn't. But I want to talk about switch stance. On this game, it's like on this game, left stick, left foot, right stick, right foot. Same on session. Left stick, left foot, right stick, right foot. On this game, you can't change that. On session, you can. You can change it to front foot or back foot. And you can also actually change the controls on session to be like EA Skate as well, if you really don't want to learn these new ones. But I strongly urge you do. But the way this game does it, left foot, right foot, that's the way by default it is in session. And I would recommend you leave it like that. Front foot, back foot is easier, but it's not as realistic. I recommend you leave it on left foot, right foot. So as you can see now, my left foot is now my back foot, but it's still on the left stick. My right foot's now my front foot, but it's still on the right stick. Now, when we were in regular stance, to do an ollie, we pulled down on the right stick and we pushed up on the left one. Well, we didn't push up because we don't need to, but let's pretend we do have to. So like that. Now, on switch stance, that does a fakey ollie, which is a trick. So we're doing exactly the same movement as we did to do an ollie. In fact, I'm going to ignore the blue foot because we don't need to use it, so we'll just pull back on this one. So when I was in regular stance, that did an ollie. When I'm in switch stance, that exact same movement, exact same muscle memory on my thumb, does a fakey ollie. It's the same for every single trick. On regular stance, doing what I'm about to do now, did a kickflip. On switch stance, it's going to do a fake kickflip. So there you go, fake kickflip, heel flip, exactly the same thing. Now on session, I don't know kind of why they did this, but they've got it the other way. So on session, if you try and do a trick that you did in regular stance, but you're trying to do in switch stance, so you're doing the fakey version of that trick, the input is not the same as it was in regular stance. It's very different, and that makes it really hard. So every time you land in switch stance, all of a sudden your brain has got to completely switch on what's going on with the controller. On this game, it doesn't have to. All that happens, you can do exactly the same movements, and it's going to stick the word fakey before your trick. It's going to be exactly the same trick as it was before, but you're doing it backwards, so it's a fakey. So we've got our kickflip. It's a fakey kickflip because we're standing on our board in switch stance. We do exactly the same movement on regular, and we've got our normal kickflip. Now, on session, it's a bit weird because on session, pushing up on either controller is like on the game that is moving your feet towards the front, as in the nose of the board. So out towards the direction that we are going towards. Pulling back on the controller is going to move either one of your feet back towards the direction you've just come from. Now, it kind of makes sense. When I say it, that makes sense. Moving right on your sticks, so doing a heel flip like that, right on either one of your sticks on session moves your foot, front or back, towards the right-hand side of your TV. Moving left on your stick, so a kick flip in regular stance, that moves either one of your feet, front or back, towards the left-hand side of your TV. Now, when I explain it like that, that's the way session works, you think, yeah, that's all logical, it makes sense. But it's actually wrong, because that's not what you do with your feet. When I do a kickflip with my feet, I prepare with my back foot, I can press my ollie, I do my ollie, and I flick my front foot, my left foot out towards the left, and that does a kickflip. Now if I'm skating fakie, I do the same thing. I prepare with my right leg, which is now my front foot because in my direction of travel, because I'm in switch, and I pop my ollie, and my left foot flicks out to the left, and I do a kickflip. It's exactly the same muscles in my legs doing a trick. It just so happens that my skateboarder is traveling in a different direction. But I'm doing the same thing. Now in this game, that's how it works. I do a kickflip like this, I turn around, and I do exactly the same movement. I do a fakie kickflip. That's exactly the same as real life. I'm using the same muscles to do the same trick, normal or fakie. On session, it's exactly the opposite. So if I did pulling the stick down like that on session, what's going to happen is his back foot is going to move, to the direction of where the skateboarder has just come from. So being as we're traveling, in towards the television, that's going to move my red foot, which is my front foot, towards the middle of the board, and nothing will happen. That's the same as on this game doing this. So the controls are upside down. So as soon as you land after a 180 on session, all of a sudden your controls are upside down. They're also backwards, left and right as well. So on this game, doing this will be a kickflip, but to do a kickflip, I moved my stick towards the left-hand side of the TV. I moved it that way, okay? But his foot moved towards the right-hand side of the TV. So watch the blue foot. I'm moving the stick to the left, the foot moves to the right. Heel flip, I'm moving the stick to the right, the foot moves to the left. Now, you might think, oh, that's backwards, but it ain't. That's correct on this game. Because what you've got to think is, on this game, they have put the controls on your feet as though you are the skateboarder. On session, they've put the controls on your feet as though you are someone playing a game sitting on the couch, looking at the skateboarder, and my position on the couch doesn't change. Forward's always forward, backwards is always behind the couch, left is always on my left-hand side, right's always on the right-hand side. I never turn around, so those controls always stay the same. But when my skateboarder turns around and he starts skating switch, all of a sudden everything's backwards. On this game, when the skateboarder turns around, the controls turn around with him, so that you can do a movement that was a kickflip that becomes a fakey kickflip. Now I'm sure you will agree, if you are a skater, this is right, session is wrong, because my muscles in my legs do the same thing for a regular kickflip as they do a fakey kickflip. Now I can do a kickflip traveling forwards, I can do a kickflip traveling backwards, and I can do a kickflip staying still, okay? Every single one of those uses the same muscles in my legs. It's just a direction of travel is different. That's all it is. Now in this game, that's the way the controls work. On session, it doesn't work like that. Right. Now, the reason that makes this game easier means that I can learn. Let's imagine for a moment you were really, really bloody struggling with the controls, but you managed to learn to do a kickflip, okay? So you're in regular stance. The only trick you've learned on the game is a kickflip. That's all you can do. Everything else you try and do, you mess it up. You can take that movement, that kickflip, and if you land in switch, you can do that same movement with your thumbs. You've only learnt one movement, but it works in both directions. So that means you can learn a bunch of tricks on your controller in regular stance, and when you're in switch stance, all those tricks still work, but they're now fakey instead of normal. So when you're doing a line, you absolutely never need to think, I'm in switch, I've got to do something different. You never need to think that. When you're doing a line in session, when you're in switch, if you try and do the same thing on the controller that you did in regular stance, absolutely nothing will happen at all. It doesn't even bend down, it doesn't even do this, it does nothing. You push on the stick the way that you expect to, and nothing happens. So, for that reason, the way that the mechanics of these sticks translate to your feet on Skater XL is more accurate to real life skateboarding. And that means that doing tricks in the game are a lot easier when you're doing a line, because you only have to learn a bunch of tricks in regular stance, And then when you've gone over to switch stance, they all work just the same. It's just they're fakey versions of the same tricks. So doing a line is really easy. Now, whether we're in fakey or regular stance as well, I thought I was in regular. Right, whether you're in fakey or regular, you've got this big fat ollie, like that, pull down on both sticks, you do a big fat ollie. We change over to switch stance, and the same thing works. We pull down on both sticks, and we're going to do a big fat fakey ollie, which will get us onto most obstacles. So you can see that in any situation in the game where you've got to do a trick because there's an obstacle coming up, this movement on the controller, bang, both sticks down, is going to be all right for you. It'd be pretty unusual that won't be enough for you to be able to deal with the obstacle. And that pulling both sticks down quick is really bloody easy to do. You don't have to prepare it. You can do it right at the last minute. Just flick them down and let them go. And you don't have to worry about your front foot at all. If you want to use just one stick, you can do that, fakey or normal. If you want to use both sticks to get the higher version, you can do that. But it's like, that gets you over any obstacle. Well, it doesn't, but it gets you over most obstacles, whether you are in regular or switch stance. Now in session, to get over an obstacle in regular stance, you got to prepare your ollie correctly. If you don't prepare it well, it ain't going to work. You got to compress, and you have to be compressed for a while before you pop the trick. But you have to move the stick down fast as well. If you move it down too slow, your compression won't be very good, depending on what your settings are, because you can adjust all of this. And when you are ready to do the trick, you have to pop your front foot. And you've got to pop your front foot good as well. If you do a bad pop, like a little tiny bit like this, you'll do a crap ollie in session. So when you approach an obstacle in session, you've got to prepare your back foot properly, and you've got to level your board off with your front foot properly as well. That is so much more difficult to do than this, unbelievably so. Now, once you've gone round to being in switch stance in this game, you've got the same thing available to you. But that thing we just did before, preparing your back foot and getting ready, and then doing your front foot, that won't do anything at all in session. We're now in switch stance, and in switch stance on session, you actually have to push this foot upwards. Consider that is towards the direction of travel. So compressing your red foot on it's not the nose because your board is turned round, but we'll say the nose. It's compressing it down, ready to pop an ollie. So it's backwards. So instead of doing this on the controls, red one down, blue one up, you've suddenly got to do this on the controls. Red one up, blue one down. That does nothing on this game. But on session, if you want to do a fakey ollie to get on your next obstacle, it's that. So every time you turn around, you've got this new thing you've got to do. And it's like, if you're going to do, you think to yourself, I want to do a kickflip, that'd be your regular kickflip on session, regular stance, not what we're doing at the moment. That would be a kickflip. But as soon as you've gone into switch stance on session, it's the opposite. It would be that movement. So don't look at the skater, look at the controller. That one up and that one over. So once you've let it go, you do it like that. The sticks are bouncing. I'm not pushing the stick down, it's just bouncing. So basically you do this one, when you let it go, you do that one to there, and that would be your fakey kickflip. But on this game, regular kickflip, same movement, fakey kickflip, makes it much easier. So anyway, if you've come from session, some things you're going to notice when you jump in here. You're going to think the graphics look awful. The physics of the skateboarding to do with the gravity is bloody terrible. And if you've been skating switch on session, all of a sudden none of your tricks are going to work. You're going to try and do something on this game, you'll try and do this, and you'll be like, what's going on? Why isn't he doing a trick? He's not doing a trick because this game's nailed the front foot and back foot properly, and session's got it mixed up. On this game, the sticks are as though you're the skateboarder in the game. On session, it's as though you're the player sitting on your couch watching the game. That's exactly what they've done. One of them, when you skate, it turns around, the controls turn round. The other one, it doesn't work like that, and it kind of like means it isn't right. It means it's a lot more difficult. So you come in here from session, you will notice the graphics, because the graphics in session are quite nice. They're not brilliant, but they are really nice. You come in here, they are substantially worse, so it's a stark contrast. You'd notice it, and you immediately think, God, it looks bloody awful. It looks like a 360 game. Map over to this map, because this map is the most beautiful one by a long way, and then it won't bother you so much. All of this map's nice. And yeah, there are no cars on here as well, so you don't have to look at them hideous wheels. Just come over here. It's a lovely map anyway. And then the graphics won't bother you so much. It's by far the nicest one on the game for just looks I'm talking about. Not necessarily the best one to skate, but just the way it looks. But after you've played the game for a few days, you really won't notice the graphics so much anyway. But as I said before, I'd love them to polish this game up a little bit so the graphics in every level look really nice. That would be much better. But it's not a deal breaker. But when you first arrive here, you can't help but notice it. Now, if you've watched the game in development on Steam and you've got it on PC, probably the very first version you played, you thought the graphics looked shit, but obviously it's a game in development, so the graphics will get better. And the graphics did get better. They didn't get really good, but they got better than they were originally. But as that process was happening, you got so focused on the game that you started to not even notice the graphics. The first time you played it, you probably did notice them, but you forgave them because it was in development. Now, the people who have never played it on Steam, never played it on PC, they downloaded it the other day, so they had that experience of noticing the bad graphics on a final release game. And when that happens to you, you're not quite so forgiving because you're thinking, hang on a minute, this looks like a last generation graphics on a game. I've just paid full price for it and I feel like that's a bit out of order. It's not really forgivable. So you had that experience when the game was in pre-order. Now, not pre-order, pre-release, work in progress. Now you go into session now when it's a work in progress, so if there's a problem on there, you can sort of say, it's a work in progress, I'll forgive it a little bit. So you see what I'm saying? When you arrive at a game, which is an official release, and you've not seen any progress at all, you expect it to be ready. You expect the graphics to be good. Now, obviously, if you've played the game for more than a couple of days, you don't even notice the graphics anymore. So when you guys played it before it was ready, when it was in development, the graphics were bad at the beginning, you might have noticed them right at the start, but as you carried on playing the game, all of a sudden you didn't notice the graphics anymore, and at the same time as that happening, the graphics also got better, but they never ever got very good. But that's okay, because by the time the game was released, the graphics weren't important to you guys at all anymore whatsoever. But to the people that have just landed on this game, the graphics are quite shocking when you first get in here. They really are. And I mean, I shouldn't be saying all of this while I'm sitting in this level, because this level does look pretty good. It looks pretty beautiful. Some of the other levels look fucking awful. But it's a very when you land in this game for the first time on the I'll say 360 because it looks like one. You're on the Xbox One, you download this, you boot it up, you're in an environment where the graphics look bloody horrible. You can immediately see those opaque grey rectangles instead of windows, the horrible car tyres. It just looks awful. The immediate initial response is, this looks like a last generation game. And there's no way you can't see it. It's so glaring to you, you can't not see that. You play it for a few days, you don't notice it anymore, but when you first jump in here, you do notice it, you notice it a lot. Now it's exactly the same situation with the gravity. If you watch this game in development, the very first time you ever played it, you might have thought to yourself, you might have done, you might not have done, but you might have thought it feels a little bit floaty, but within 2 hours of playing it, you're completely used to that. And when you first noticed it, you're thinking, feels a little bit floaty, but it's still in development. So, probably they'll iron that out and they'll sort it out. But then after a couple of hours, you don't care about the floatiness anymore because it actually feels all right. It's quite nice. Now, the people that downloaded this game a couple of days ago, they jumped in here on a final game that was ready. They started doing tricks and they were like, oh my fucking God, the physics are terrible. I feel like I'm on the moon. It's such an incredibly jarring experience when you first experience it and you ain't got used to it yet. It feels bloody awful. And when your boards, when you start doing tricks and things, you're like, I feel like I'm made of helium. It doesn't feel like I'm connecting with anything. It feels horrible. And you just think, what the fuck are they doing, releasing the game in this state? But after a few hours of playing it in that state, the game ain't changed, but you have. You've sort of got used to it. Now, the same thing happens in real life, right? In real life, whenever anything changes, it's a bit jarring for a bit, and then your brain adapts to it, and it becomes normal. Like years ago, I read about this dude. He made a pair of glasses that were like a mirror at an angle that meant that when he got the glasses on, everything was upside down. And when he first put those glasses on, it was like a really, really distorting experience from him. He was like, whoa, everything's backwards. It's really hard to do anything. I'm falling over. He really struggled with it. Now his brain adjusted to that seeing upside down to the point where in a really short amount of time, that was totally normal to him for everything to be upside down. And then a little bit later when he took the glasses off and he went back to normal right way up world, it was a really jarring experience to him because his brain had got used to upside down world. That applies to everything that we do on a game or in real life. That is the way the human brain works. It habitualizes stuff. If something isn't quite right, it's different from the norm, your first experience of it is going to be jarring. It's going to be like, whoa, what the fuck's going on? This ain't right. That's what happens when you come on this game and you start doing tricks and the gravity is fucking atrocious. But your brain adjusts pretty quickly. So anyone who came on here, they played this game and they thought it's absolutely horrible. What do they think they're doing? The physics are so off, it's ridiculous. Stick with it because the game won't change, but you will. After, you don't even need days, you only need a few hours, and all of a sudden, you don't even notice that it's floaty. You honestly don't. But just like that guy who had the upside down glasses on, when he took them off and went back to real world reality, it was, like a stark experience for him. It was jarring. It was like, everything feels completely wrong now. It all feels upside down. He'd gone back to normal, but it felt wrong. Now, if you play Session, the gravity is pretty much nailed like Earth gravity. When you very first play it, you don't notice anything jarring because it isn't jarring, it feels right. You come into this game and it's incredibly jarring, it feels bloody awful. But all the people that have played it on PC or they've got used to it, they will wonder what the fuck you're talking about because their brains have adjusted to this floaty gravity. So you complain about it and they think, no, what are you talking about? It's right. It's not right. Their brains have adjusted. Now, after a few hours, your brain will do that too, and this will feel good. It will feel awesome. It will feel like skateboarding. But as soon as you go back to a game where the gravity is right, it'll be like that dude that took his glasses off and all of a sudden he's saying everything's upside down. It's not, it's back to normal. But his brain had got used to the other way. He had habitualized what was wrong, and now what is right feels wrong. That's what happens when you play Session. You come in here, it feels fucking horrible. You stick with it for a bit, it starts to feel nice. You start to not notice that you're skating on the moon. You go back to Session feels bloody horrible, and you can't do anything because your brain has acclimatized itself to moon physics. After you've been on Session for a few hours, your brain goes back to normal Earth physics, and then that feels good again. You come back in here, and all of a sudden you're like, it feels a bit floaty, but this time it only feels floaty for the first few tricks because you've already got that kind of, you've already got used to it, and your brain kind of goes, oh, we're in this mode now, and it kind of switches back and forth, and the more often you do that, the quicker your brain will adjust. The gravity of the physics on this game, what anyone says, they simply aren't correct. It's way too floaty, but you do adjust to it. It feels good. It's fun, it makes the game easier to play, it makes it a little bit arcadey, and that makes it an enjoyable experience. If you play both of these games, and you take the effort to learn both of these games, this one's a lot of fun. The other one's a lot of work. It's like you can do a line of tricks on here and it feels and looks good, and it is rewarding. You do a line of tricks on Session, and it also feels and looks good, and it's actually much more rewarding because it's a lot harder. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this game feels fun. This game is quite arcadey, but it still feels really good. It's like, being able to pop an ollie just with your back foot, that ain't real. That's like an arcade thing. If you're on Tony Hawk's, you just press a button and you pop an ollie. That's not real life. I don't have a button on my body that I can press and I'm going to do an ollie. It's not real life. It's very arcadey. Now, this game has this stick that I can pull down and I'll do an ollie. The stick represents my back foot, and if I pull it down and let it go, I do an ollie. That's not real life. That's a little bit arcadey, but it doesn't take away from the fun experience you have playing this game. Now, on Session, you pull down on your back foot, you flick the right foot up. Now, it's still not real life because my body ain't got little sticks poking out of it that I twiddle with my fingers. But what it's doing is it's representing what's going on with my feet in really quite an accurate way. So if you're talking about this game and session being a simulator of skateboarding, then just the difference of the ollies, having, being able to do that, which just isn't correct, or having to do this, which is a pretty good representation of skateboarding using a controller, is still not skateboarding. I didn't move my feet at all. I have to move my feet in real life to do an ollie. My feet are on the floor underneath my chair. I didn't move them at all. So it's not like skateboarding in real life because I did an ollie with my thumbs. But if you're translating the movements of my thumbs into that dude on my TV's movement of his feet, then this is a much more accurate representation of what his feet need to do to perform that trick. Doing this or doing this ain't going to pop an ollie in real life at all. If I do that movement, back foot down, on a real skateboard, I won't do an ollie. I'll prepare one, then I'll just stand back up. Now in session, that's what happens. So if you are hating on this game because you've played Session or EA Skate, then I've got to say, stick with it. I know the gravity is off, but your brain gets used to that. Everybody's brain does. That's just human nature. That's why we are. Something new comes along. It's a jarring experience for a bit. It feels fucking horrible. After a while, your brain adjusts to that new thing, and then that thing feels normal. Okay? It starts to feel normal. After a while, this game will feel normal, and when you move out of session, that one will feel wrong. But the physics of the gravity on session are a lot closer to real life skateboarding in Earth gravity than this is. But it's like if you went to a place on Earth where the gravity is a little bit lower than somewhere else. For instance, if we had a really fucking high mountain on Earth, the further you are away from the core of the Earth, the lower the gravity is going to be. Gravity is much stronger. If you go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, like the deepest place on Earth, the gravity is a lot stronger than it is if you go up to Mount Everest. The difference is negligible to a human, but if we had the ability to go up a much, much, much higher, or if we went to another planet where the gravity is different, and you skated for a bit, you'd be like, whoa, I can do amazing tricks, it's really floaty. And it'd feel weird to you, it'd feel jarring. You would know that the gravity ain't right. But after you've done it for a few hours, your mind would habitualize this and it would feel completely normal to you. You'd come back to Earth, you'd try and skate on Earth, and you're like, fucking hell, this is really hard. It just feels like my board is being sucked to the ground like a magnet. That's how it'd feel because your brain would be habitualized to whatever planet you've just been on skating. But after a while, it'd come back to Earth gravity. And that's what happens with these two games. Session is representing Earth gravity really quite well, which is why if you play Session having never been on this, there is no... Hang on a bit, let's wait for the motorbike with a crap exhaust to go by. Right, if you've played Session and you've not played this, it doesn't feel jarring. If you're a skateboarder and you go on Session before you go on this, you do some ollies, you do some tricks and stuff, you go out of a ramp and what have you, nothing feels wrong about the gravity. It's not a jarring experience because it's not significantly different from what real world gravity is. It just feels normal. But if you come onto this game, having played for a bit in Session, then this game feels astonishingly floaty. It's a very jarring experience, but as I say, you get used to it. Now, the ollie thing is not real, but it's really bloody useful. I can forgive it that it ain't real. I like that it's in the game because sometimes you're on a line, you ain't got enough time to prepare a proper ollie, so you just go like that and you've done a really good trick. And I would rather have the ability to do that and know that I can maintain my line and ollie over a picnic table and have a lot of fun putting down a good line than, fall off. Falling off is frustrating. Now in Session, I haven't got that option. In Session, I have to do something that is quite similar to what I'd have to do in real life. And if I don't do it right, I'm going to fall off. And in real life, if I put shit input in my feet, my skateboard will do a shit trick and I'll fall off. Session's kind of nailed that. This game hasn't. Now, a lot of people that were comparing these two games and talking about why they prefer this one was saying the reason they prefer it is because of the character animation. And if you're videoing your line, which is really what both of these games are about, it's about skateboarding, doing a few tricks and then doing a video montage of it. That's what they're about, really. A lot of people are saying the actual graphics of the animations on this game look a lot more like real skateboarding. It looks a bit flowy, it looks nicer. And they're saying about the animation of the graphics on Session look a little bit canned. Looks like he's got a stick up his arse, is what someone said, and it's not quite right. So you kind of do your line, and then you video it and you look at it, and to watch the line is more pleasing on this game because the animations look better. But the animation is not the physics, right? You could have no animation at all of what your bloke is doing, but you could have the physics nailed on the skateboard, nailed on the gravity and all that stuff. Now, obviously, Session is a work in progress. We know the animations ain't perfect yet. I assume that's an area that they're going to continue working on and getting better. This game has probably got them to where it's going to have them, and that's it. But the gravity and the reality of what's going on with your feet and what goes on real-world skateboarding, in Session, even though what your character does might look a little bit wooden, the way he holds his body, what actually happens with the physics and the mechanics of the skateboard is a lot more accurate to real-world skateboarding on Earth than this game is. Especially as you have to use your front foot to pop an ollie and we don't have floaty gravity. So what's going on with the character above the board, that's nothing to do with the physics of the physical skateboard trick. That's to do with the animation of the skateboarder that they present to you, which either they've sort of just done something by dragging, like a wireframe model around to get something that looks all right, or they've kind of like done motion capture on a real life skateboarder and they've got something that looks fucking brilliant. But regardless of whether that bit looks brilliant or not, the mechanics of the physics of the skateboard ain't really connected to that. That's not the same thing. So when Session gets that bit right, when it starts saying, right, let's spend some money on some mocap, let's get some bloody good skateboarders in here, let's get some motion capture and really make the graphics of our skateboarder look like he's properly doing whatever trick this is. I mean, in particular, when you pop an ollie, he dips his nose down. And, it don't look right, it doesn't level up right. When you do a blunt slide, it's fucking horrible. He hooks on in completely the wrong place. But what Session will do is they, hopefully, before release, will do some motion capture and get good animations for the graphics of the skateboarder. That does not change the physics of what's going on with the actual skateboard or the trick or your feet. It's just the way the skateboarder looks when he is floating above your board as you're doing a trick. So if one of the games nails the physics and the other one don't, and then both games get that animation of the skateboarder perfect up on top, then the game that nailed the physics is going to be the one that feels and looks a lot better. Now, at the moment, the one that's nailed the physics of what the skateboard does when you do a trick and got it closer to real-life skateboarding is Session. Now, that's just the way it is. I'm not saying this game is bad. I'm not saying that it's not fun or anything like that. I think it's really good. I do love this game. I really have a lot of fun playing it. And I would prefer to sit playing this game than sit playing Session, simply because this is so much easier. It's really, really fucking easy. It's a lot more arcadey. That makes it more fun. And it's kind of, for those reasons, I sort of like playing this game more. But also for those reasons, Session's more accurate to what you need to do. The gravity's more accurate to what real world is like, and what you do with your feet is more accurate to get that trick. And it's a work in progress, and there are things in Session that ain't quite right, and let's hope that before they release they polish those. This game should have done that. It should have said, we're a work in progress, some things ain't right, we ain't got the gravity quite right yet on the console version, we're going to sort that out before release, don't worry about it. But they didn't. They released the game with the gravity being a bit too floaty, and we've just got to habitualise our brains to that and get used to it. But I've got to say, if you are a fan of this game and you played this game first and you got used to that weird gravity and you got used to being able to pop massive ollies without having to do any skill on your input at all, right? That is arcadey, okay? That's more like Tony Hawk's than it is like a skate simulator. Being able to do a massive ollie just by going like that, that's pure arcade. That's nothing to do with real world skateboarding at all, especially this version, nothing. I didn't use both feet, I didn't compress, I didn't time it, there was no consideration about how fast or how far I was moving the stick. I just flicked it down. It's like I've got a 2-year-old nephew. He could do a big fat ollie on this game. He's never stood in a skateboard in his life, but he could do this and do a big fat ollie. That is not a simulator, that's very arcadey. This movement, I could remap my controllers to say down on my controller is my A button, and I could press the A button and I'd do a big fat ollie. You know what I'm saying? Now on session I wouldn't be able to do that, because on session the way I move the sticks up and down, how far, how fast and all that stuff affects the ollie. I could not map anything to do with my the sticks onto a button and perform an ollie on session. It just wouldn't be possible, because I have to pull the stick down. I've got to do it at a certain speed for it to be good. I've got to pull it down a certain distance for it to be good, and I've also got to push this one up, and I've got to do that properly as well. Otherwise I ain't going to get an ollie. And I think it's very, very, very apparent when you realise that, you know, that a 2-year-old kid could do a big fat ollie that's never stood on a skateboard. Because that is possible, this is not a skateboard simulator, it's an arcade game that's doing skateboarding. Now all the rest of the tricks, the kick flips and stuff, all of that is a lot closer to a simulator, because I've got a stick that represents my blue foot, my blue stick, and I have to move it to the left if I want to do a kick flip. Like I have to move my foot to the left if I want to do a kick flip in real life. But and also, depending on how I move it, it's going to depend on the kick flip. So if I move it slow, it'll be a slow kick flip. If I move it fast, it'll be a faster kickflip. So that is much closer to a simulator. It's much closer to a simulator than it is to arcade. I don't think my 2-year-old nephew could do a good kickflip on this game at all. He might be able to. He wouldn't be able to do a flip. And I also think that if you have experience on a skateboard and you can translate your skateboarding experience to inputs on these sticks, you'll probably be better on this game than somebody who's never stood on a skateboard. But the margin of error on this game is quite small. I can do shitty inputs, I'll still do a fucking brilliant kickflip. Shit input, good kickflip. Bang, 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 bang. If I do that on session, the trick will be bloody awful. And that's because session is more of a simulator than this game is. Session requires you to do good inputs to get good outputs. This game allows you to do lazy inputs to get brilliant outputs. Lazy input, brilliant output. Lazy input, brilliant output. Get yourself on session and try and do tricks that good by putting inputs into your controller that are that bad, and it ain't going to work. So if you've started out on this game and you're moving over to session, you're going to hate on session. First of all, it's going to feel like you ain't got time to do tricks, because all that floaty gravity, that ain't there anymore, that goes. And it'll take you a while to adjust to real world gravity, but once you adjust to it, it'll take you a few hours, but once you adjust to it, it'll feel good. You'll come back in here and this will feel off, it'll feel floaty, but you'll adjust back and then this will feel good again. That's just the way the brain works. You really need, if you move from this game to session, you really need to start thinking, if I do bad things with my feet, in real life skateboarding, I will do bad tricks. If I do bad things on my sticks, I'm going to do bad tricks. Now that does apply on this game as well, but it's incredibly forgiving on how bad those inputs can be and how good your tricks can be. On session, it's not. On session, you've got to move these sticks like you would move your feet if you're expecting to do a good trick. And if you're a bit lazy with your movements, then your trick's going to be shit, or it's just not going to work and you're going to fall off. Exactly the same as real world. If you do shit things with your feet, you're going to do a shit trick. And that session has got that pretty much nailed. It ain't perfect, it makes lots of mistakes, but they ain't even released yet. They're on a work in progress, and they've nailed that bit way better than this game. Now, you know, if you do, you can do really good inputs on your sticks on this game, and your ollie or your kickflip or whatever will be better. But you can do really diabolically shit inputs on this game, and you're going to do a pretty fucking good kickflip anyway. Whereas on session, if you do a really, really good input, you'll do a really good kickflip. If you do an input that is mediocre, your kickflip will be crap. And if you do a really shit input, you ain't going to do a kickflip at all. You're just going to fall off. It's like, that's the difference between something that's a bit arcadey and something that is a lot more like a simulator. And if you want to spend, rather than just arguing in the comments because you like one of these and you don't like the other one, just go and try out these things that I'm saying. Try and do lazy inputs on session and see what happens. You'll get bad input, bad output, simple as that. But practice for a few hours and do a really good input and see what happens. You'll get a good output. Now, the animation of your guy floating above your board whilst your board is giving you the good output might not be as good as it looks on here, because that game's a work in progress and this game isn't. This game's a final release. It's in the store. We're paying full price for it. So you've got to bear those things in mind. But the quality of the input on this game, it really ain't that important. You can get away with putting in a diabolically shit input and you're going to do a fucking amazing trick like that. Do that on session and see what happens. It's not the same. Do it in real life and see what happens. It's not the same. Do this in real life and see what happens. Nothing will happen. Do that in real life and see what happens. Nothing will happen. It's just not the same. And on session, do that. What will happen? The same as real life. You'll prepare an ollie and you'll fuck it off. Now, the other thing that you'll notice if you've come from session onto this is when you roll over this bit of dirt here. I mean, look at this. That's a three-dimensional thing. It's a curb, look. It's got a lip and then it's got dirt, right? On session, if you roll over something like that, you'll clunk down onto the dirt and then the sound of your wheels will be like you're on dirt and you'll probably fall off. On this game, that doesn't happen. You carry on rolling completely straight and it sounds like pavement no matter what. And it's like, let me turn my telly up a tiny little bit. I won't turn it up too much because it'll echo and you guys can hear it anyway, but I want to hear this cobblestone. So I sound like I'm on pavement at the minute. My wheels. Over here we've got some cobblestones. What do they sound like? Oh, they do work. Cobblestones work on this game. Same as on session. It's whatever you're skating on, it sounds right on session. Whatever you're skating on sounds right. But on this game, a lot of the stuff, not them cobblestones, but a lot of the stuff isn't right. It doesn't make that noise when you go onto a bit of grass. But on session, it does. And that, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's still a thing that's not right. And it's a real shame that it's not right. It would be very nice if they'd have made that right. It can't be much effort to say my wheels are on dirt, play this sound. Wouldn't have cost much more money to go and get a microphone and record the sound of wheels on dirt, save that into the files of the game and say wheel on dirt equals play this sound, wheel on tarmac equals play this sound. It ain't difficult, it don't cost much money, it's just fucking laziness, right? I do like this game, but the developers are really bloody lazy if they can't be bothered to put a sound file in of my wheels being on different terrains. It's like Session did that. That doesn't cost money. It's all down to laziness. I mean, it's a little tiny bit more time recording one more audio file or downloading a sample of an audio file from a database. You probably wouldn't have to go and record it yourself. You ain't gonna go out into the world and record the sound of someone skateboarding on dirt. Just download a sample of that from somewhere. I'm sure those things exist, but even if they don't, if you've got to go out with your own microphone, it really ain't much effort. And then to save that audio file into the rest of the files of the game and to get it to play that one when you're on that terrain, that's no more difficult. That's no more money. That's one line of code. It's nothing. It really ain't nothing. The fact that they haven't done that all comes down to sloppiness, laziness, lack of care. It's like, on Session, there are a few things that happen in that game that really show you the heart of the developers, the dedication and the passion. And the one thing that really stands out is when you very first start the game, it says press A, you press A, and the skateboarder stands up and he moves his board from one end to the other and he chucks it on the floor, he adjusts it with his foot, he stands on it, he gets ready to skate. That entire animation and the sound of that animation is so spot on, it's beautiful. That animation shows that there is an astonishing amount of heart and passion attention to detail and dedication in that game. It's a beautiful animation, and it's a real nice introduction to the game when you first boot it up. The fact that on this game I just rolled across a little bit of a garden, I didn't drop down off the curb, I stayed at the same level, I rolled across something that sounded like pavement even though it was a load of dirt, I didn't fall off, I didn't slow down, nothing changed. That's just, that shows there's no heart, there's no passion, there's no dedication, there's no attention to detail. It's just fucking lazy and sloppy and a bit shit. Let's be honest, that's pretty bloody awful. However much you like this game, what I just did, rolling across this bit of whatever I don't know where it's gone, but just rolling across that little bit of garden, like this thing here, rolling across this without falling off, without my skateboard going up or down, without the sound of my wheels changing whatsoever. That's fucking diabolical, very lazy, and it just shows a lack of attention to detail, a lack of commitment, a lack of passion, a lack of heart. It's just bloody awful, really. It is really inexcusable. The fortunate thing is you're not going to do that very often. The object of the game is not to roll over the dirt, you know what I mean? But if you do that in a session, the sound changes and you fall off. Because in real life, if you do that, the sound changes and you fall off. So yet again, we see another example in this game where it's a little bit arcadey. It's not like a simulator, but it makes the game easier. It makes it easier for beginners. Because if you accidentally roll over a bit of garden, it don't matter, you won't fall off. So you can maintain your line. It makes it a much easier game to play. And all of the things that we've talked about, all of them, they all make this game easier to play. Apart from like having crap graphics, that don't make it easier to play. You've just got to ignore them. That's a bad thing, full stop. There's no good thing about having shitty graphics, but you can learn to ignore them when you start focusing on the line. Now, my videos about this game get a lot of hate. I mean, if you want to argue with the points that I've made on this game, I really can't see how you can, because there's nothing that I've said that is not. It's just the way it is. That's just the way this game is. I'm not giving you my opinion of what is this and what is that. I'm just saying, look, I'm rolling over this garden. What's happening with my skateboard ain't right. I'm pulling down on a stick and doing an ollie. It ain't right. Now, this video ain't about what's wrong with the game. It's about how to enjoy the game. And the way you enjoy this game is to just play it for a bit of time. Put in a few hours, and I'll tell you what, whatever you think of it, straight out the gate, whatever you think on day one, however much you hate this, you're probably thinking these fucking, moon physics are absolutely atrocious. I thought that on day one, but you habitualise that and you get used to it. It's like you might think the environments look terrible, the graphics are like a 360. Right? I thought that on day one, but after a while you don't notice it. It becomes not important to you. It would be bloody lovely if it weren't like that, but it's not important. On day one, you might roll over a garden like I just did. Your board stays on the same level, so you're actually floating in the air, because the garden did dip down, at least the size of my wheels. But my wheels didn't respond to that. And you might think, Jesus Christ, that's fucking awful. What's going on? The sound didn't change. I didn't fall off. I didn't slow down. I didn't change my level. What's this all about? It's bloody awful. But as you continue playing the game, you're probably not going to roll over a garden, because that's really not what skateboarders want to do. You want to stay on the terrain that is skatable. But the other day, I actually rolled through a bunch of pebbles. I don't think they're on this park. I think they're on another one. But I'll tell you what, it was fucking diabolical. It's like my wheels had disappeared under the pebbles, and I was rolling along like it was a bloody, lovely, flat, nice bit of polished concrete or pavement. It made a noise like pavement, and I just rolled straight through the pebbles with my wheels underground, and nothing happened. I didn't fall off, nothing happened. That's not real, that's not a simulator, that's just fucking lazy and really, really poor. But equally, just like all the other things that aren't quite right with this game, when you skate and you enjoy putting down a line, your intention is not to roll over a bunch of pebbles. So the idea of this being a simulator of real life skateboarding, some of the stuff in this game is not intended for you to ever interact with it. It's just intended to look nice in your peripheral vision as you skateboard past it. And if that's a bunch of pebbles on the ground, don't try and skate on them. That's not why they're there. It's just there so that there's some scenery for you whilst you're skating on the actual skatable things. It's almost like they've put some stuff down and they've said, here's a rail. I want this rail to be a physical object in this game, and the skateboard will interact with it. You can't go through it, it's a physical object. And then they've put some other stuff down and they've said, here's a little garden. I want this garden to be not a skatable object. It's not physical. It doesn't affect the skateboard or the physics at all. And if a skateboard is anywhere near it, they just float on through it like it wasn't even there. This entire thing here, I don't know what would happen if I hit the tree. I assume the tree is a physical object, and if I hit it, I'll fall off. If it's not, I'll be bloody disappointed. Yeah, the tree is a physical object. If I hit the tree, it has an effect on me. But this ground is not. That tree might as well just be growing out of a tiny little hole inside this bit of flat land, because all of the bottom of it I can skate on. So there's nothing to do with physics going on here. All of this tiny little garden is just to make this bit look nice. And that's not a bad thing. I have no intention of skating over there, and that little garden being there does look nice. I'd prefer it to be there than not be there. I would prefer it to be exactly as it is now, like I can skate across it, but it's there and it looks good, than it to not be there at all and it just be a tree growing out a tiny hole. So I think that's better. But that said, I would much, much prefer that it worked like it should do. Like if I went onto it, I'd kind of like drop down off the ledge and then I'd slow down, the sound of my skateboard would change and I'd probably fall off. Now, if you play on session and you come across something like this, that is precisely what happens. Your skateboard drops down, it makes a different noise because you're now not on the pavement anymore, you're on some soil, and you fall over. That's what happens. So a lot of people are saying, this is more realistic than session. It really isn't. For so many reasons, it really isn't. It's more arcadey than session, it's more fun than session. It's a lot easier to play by fucking miles than session. It's difficult to get used to this. It's difficult to get used to sessions. We've got them weird controls. Once you've got used to the controls, this game's a piece of piss. It absolutely is. It's so fucking accessible and easy. It's a lot of fun. It's quite rewarding. Session is a whole different ball game completely. So if you've played this and you are hating on session, don't expect to go into session and do what you're doing in here and to be able to have fun or to be able to be successful or to be able to land any tricks at all, because you won't be able to. Get used to the gravity, that's number one. Number two, realise that you've got to use your front leg when you ollie. Number three, realise that you absolutely need to do good inputs on your controller if you want your skateboard to do good tricks in the game. If you don't do good inputs, you ain't going to get a good trick. It's as simple as that. On this game, none of that shit matters. You can float, you can do magic ollies with just 1 foot, and your inputs can be as lazy and as crap as you like, but you're still going to do a really fucking good trick. Now, if you want to make your inputs good on here, your trick will be a little bit better. But as I've said a few times now, the margin of error on this game is fucking enormous. You can skate like your controller inputs can be absolute gash, but you'll get away with it. On session, the margin of error is so tiny. If you're not doing it right on the controller, your skateboarder ain't doing it right in the game. And also as well, this game is incredibly forgiving. Excuse me. When you just bump into something. You ride, I mean, we've just seen it on that little garden. That would have made you fall off on session. But also as well, on this game, quite often I've kind of like missed my trick and bumped into the wall or something, or I've kind of like got on the rail badly. This game is incredibly forgiving on when you lock into your trick on a rail or something like that. It just lets you have it. And on session, it doesn't. If you ain't got it right, it ain't going to work. And in real life, it doesn't. If you ain't got it right, it ain't going to work. In real life, if you bump into a wall, you don't bounce off and carry on skating. And on this game, you do. On session, you don't. On session, you fall off a lot if you make mistakes, or if you bump into something, or if you go over a bit of bumpy terrain, or if you don't get your trick quite right, or if you don't lock into the ledge or the rail properly, you just fall off. but that's what real skateboarding is like. So if you are a skateboarder and you're on this game saying, yeah, this is just like skateboarding, you want to do yourself a favour and realise how arcadey this is. Get on session and really put some fucking effort into it, because you've got to put the effort in. If you don't put the effort in, you're going to get nothing out of it. It isn't as fun as this. It's not as accessible, it's not as forgiving, it's not as arcadey, it's a lot more difficult, it's a lot more realistic. If you put the effort in and you do bloody good inputs on your controller, then you'll get the reward back out. But I play both of these games, and the more I play both of them, the more I like this one, because it's just easy, right? The more I play them both, the more I come into this one instead of session. It's like, I prefer playing this game because it's arcadey. It's like, it's close enough to me feel like I'm doing real skateboarding, but it's arcadey enough for that skateboarding to be really easy to do incredibly well, even if I ain't perfected my inputs yet. Session's nothing like that. Session's a lot more hard work. You got to do bloody good inputs, otherwise it's going to be a mess. So it's like, it's all down to that margin of everything. It's like you do shockingly bad inputs on here, and your trick's amazing. Your trick's even better if you do good inputs, but you ain't got to do the good inputs. You ain't got to put the effort in and learn it. On session, you have got to. So if you have come from this to session, it's going to be hard work for you. You're going to have to put a lot of work in. You're going to have to use your front foot. You're going to have to accept that we don't live on the moon. There is gravity. You ain't going to have so much time to do your tricks. Your tricks are going to be a damn sight more realistic than the tricks you can do on here. And it's going to be really rewarding if you manage to get it right. Now, you will have to put up with a few things that are wrong on session. If you're in switch stance, they've sort of got it all backwards. If you're in switch stance, you need to imagine that you are a person sitting on a sofa, holding a controller, playing a game. And when your skater turns round, that's just like your controls are different. On this game, when you're in switch stance, you've got to imagine I'm that skateboarder. What's happening now? I just did a fake kickflip. I want to do a fake kickflip. That's the same things with my legs. I'll do the same things with my thumbs. So this game is definitely got that right, and Session's got it wrong. It's just that it just isn't correct, simply because the muscles that you use in your body to do the real life thing are the same, depending, regardless of your direction of travel, the muscles are the same. And we want that on our thumbs as well. So I don't know whether Session will realise that and change it. I bloody hope they do. I really hope they do, because it makes the game a damn sight easier. You ain't got to think, I'm in Switch, I need to do everything backwards. You just don't even have to think about it at all. So it's a damn sight easier. But anyway, that's just the way it is, guys. That is just the way it is. This game is quite arcadey. The physics are completely wrong when you can do magic ollies. That's just true. All of those things are just the way it is. But it doesn't make the game a bad game. I have more fun on here than I do on Session. When I first got in here, though, all of those things coupled with a few more things like the graphics and stuff, it just made me think, Jesus Christ, this is fucking terrible. What a hack of a game. And that's my initial impression. It's like, my impression now is, I've got used to the things that are actually wrong, like the gravity. I've started to ignore the things that are actually shit, like the graphics, and now the game's a lot of fun, and I enjoy playing it. I'm getting a lot of pleasure out of it. On day one, I wanted a refund. I honestly wanted a refund. I was thinking to myself, why would I ever play that trash again? Why would I ever go back in now? I'll just go on Session. This game's fucking awful. What are they playing at, releasing it in this state? That's the way I felt on day one. Right, now we're on day 3. I'm feeling like, I really enjoy this game. I feel like I've got my money's worth. I'm going to play it a lot, because all of those problems I've either habitualised to what is wrong, so it ain't a problem for me anymore. I've accepted the magic ollies, and they're really fucking handy. And as far as the graphics go, I'm not noticing so much anymore. Exactly the same thing. It's like, you get a new painting and you put it on the wall in your house, and you notice it every day. After a couple of weeks, it becomes background furniture. You don't notice it at all. Now on this game, I got in here, I had a look around, I thought this looks last gen, the windows look fucking awful. I play it for a couple of days, I ain't noticing the windows anymore, so it's not a problem. I mean, I still would prefer it to have nice graphics, but it ain't a problem anymore. So, as I said, if you have come from EA Skate, or from Session, or from nowhere, and you've arrived on this game, and you've looked at the things that I looked at on my first look video, and you've agreed with those things being bloody awful, and you thought, I've been ripped off, what the hell is this fucking mess? By day 3, none of those things are really going to matter to you. Your brain will have adjusted to the crazy physics and it'll be nice. And it's like, I know you don't have to be very accurate with the controls. You can be lazy as fuck. You'll do amazing tricks. You don't have to use your front foot at all when you do an ollie. Just accept those things. Accept that it's not a simulator, it's a bit arcadey, and just realise that even though it's a bit arcadey, it still feels like skateboarding, it still feels good, it's still a hell of a lot of fun. Even though my 2-year-old nephew that's never stood on a skateboard in his life or ever played any games on the Xbox could pop a big fat fucking ollie really easy by just dragging down on both sticks, even though that could happen, it's like I could drop my controller on the floor and do a massive ollie. It's like there's no skill about doing an ollie by flicking the stick down and letting it go. It's not a simulator, it's arcadey. As I said before, if I map my right stick, if I go into my console, the settings, and I map down on my right stick to my A button, if I do that, I change that configuration, I can come in this game and I'll press A and I'll do a big fat ollie. You know what I mean? That's how arcadey it is. That's how lazy your inputs can be. It's because it takes no consideration whatsoever into how quickly I pull that stick down, how long I hold it down for, how far I move it, or the pressure or anything, or having to use the other stick, like the front foot. None of those things matter at all. So it could just be a button press. On session, that's not the case. You ain't got that. I mean, if you want it to feel like a simulator, then just make sure that the inputs you're doing on the controller are always really bloody good, and just pretend that if you did really lazy shit inputs, it wouldn't work. It will work, but just pretend it wouldn't. And then you've got a simulator. But if you want the experience of a simulator, where you absolutely have to do those good inputs, otherwise what happens on your TV is going to be, wrong or bad, or you're just going to fall off, then get yourself on session, because it forces you to do it properly. There ain't no margin of error. You do it right or you don't do it at all. On this game, you do it shit and it still works. So yeah, for those reasons, this game is arcadey. And I don't care, how much of a fan you are of this game, it is arcadey. It's like I can do something really lazy on my controller and the skateboard does something that's really amazing without me putting any input, any effort, any control into the movement on my controller at all. I haven't even got bother using my front foot. It's not a simulator, but it's a fucking lot of fun. I enjoy it. I really love it. And it's like the more you play it, the more you like it than session. It's like you'll start off coming from session thinking session's fucking amazing compared to this. You'll play this for a while and you'll think, I know that session was more realistic, but I enjoy this a lot more. And then you'll just start playing this a lot more. This game ruins session because this game makes session really bloody hard. But skateboarding's hard, so that's just the way it goes. Anyway guys, you're more than welcome to leave comments. You're welcome to give this, if you've listened to this video and listened to what I've had to say without bias, then I think you'll agree that everything I've said is just, I'm not just hating on a game. I love this game. I'm definitely not hating on it. It's like I don't feel like I'm not supposed to point out the things that are wrong because it's got a small dev team or something. What's that all about? That's insane. Why would you bother going to a YouTube channel and watching people reviewing games where they just ignore all the bad bits and just say, oh, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. This feels like virtual reality. It's fucking incredible. You go and buy the game and you think, hang on a minute, that review was a load of bollocks. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play the game, I'm going to experience it, I'm going to tell you what's right, tell you what's wrong, tell you what is. Tell you that you can do lazy bullshit ollies with just your back leg that are magic. I'll tell you that because that's the reality of the game. I'll tell you that the physics are off. It's like moon gravity and you can float. It's fucking crazy. I'll tell you that's the way it is. But I'll also tell you that if you stick with it for a few days, your brain habitualizes that, you get used to it, and it becomes quite enjoyable. It becomes quite nice and you don't mind. And that thing with the ollies, just being able to pull down on one stick or pull down on both and let them go, it's really bloody handy. You'll be really glad that that's the way it is because it means you can do, almost endless lines where you never fall off because it's dead easy. So yeah, you'll be glad about that. You might think it ain't a simulator, it's getting a bit into the realms of arcadey. I mean, nowhere near Tony Hawk's, but it's certainly nowhere near Session either. It's getting a bit arcadey, but you'll appreciate big fat ollies over picnic tables just by flicking both sticks down and letting them go without any thought about it. No compression going on, no front foot whatsoever. You'll appreciate it because it means you can do a line that looks nice. So enjoy it. After a few hours, this game will feel really bloody good. It really will, and you'll have a lot of fun on it. And I'm guessing as well that I think quite a lot of people that like session and they don't like this. If you play this game for a few days and you don't touch session, you'll have a load of fun on this game. You'll go from hating it to love it in a really short amount of time. You'll love it. You really will. And you'll get back on session and you won't realise how fucking hard it is. You'll go back on session and all of a sudden you can't do anything. You won't be anywhere near as good as you used to be on session because this game, it teaches you bad habits. It makes you a bit lazy because you can get away with all that stuff. You go back on session and you can't get away with any of that stuff and all of a sudden it's really bloody hard. So yeah, this game does ruin session. It absolutely does. But I think anyone who doesn't like this, within 3 days, you'll love it. So stick with it. It doesn't change, but you do, all right? The game is still wrong in loads and loads of ways. It doesn't change, but you do change. And once you've made that change, you will love this game. So just get yourself to that point. Now, all the people that were hating on my video, they got to that point whilst they were playing something that was in development. So they were able to say, the game's in development, it's all right, these things ain't good. And then very quickly, all of a sudden, the game probably didn't change and they suddenly loved it. And then the game did change and it got better and it got improved and stuff. And it's been released at a standard now where all those people that come along on that journey love this game. All those people that stumble into this game for the very first time are seeing all of its faults and they're like, this game is gash. But give it 3 days and you're going to be in the same camp as those people who love it. Now, I think some of those people are a bit deluded because they think it's a skateboard simulator. They're talking about how it's a really accurate representation of real world. That's just deluded. It's like the gravity's like way off Earth gravity, and you can do magic ollies, and you can do really shit inputs on your controller to do an amazing trick. It is not a hardcore skateboard simulator, but I'll tell you what, it is more of a skateboard simulator than any game we've ever seen before, apart from Session. But Session is a lot of work. You really got to work at it. Anyway, guys, I'm not hating on this at all. I'm not a fanboy of anything. I've never been one of those people who go, Xbox are better, PlayStation are better, Apple's better, Android's better. I've always just used stuff, and if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. And I've switched so many times. I used to be on PlayStation, now I'm on Xbox, and I'm about to buy a PS4 because there's a few exclusives on there. I've got no allegiance to any of them. I couldn't give a toss who makes what I use. I used to be on Apple. I'm now on Android, on Huawei. For no real reason, I just switched over from one to the other. I liked my old phone. I like my new one. I used to play on Session. I'm now playing on this. I'm not a fanboy of Session, I'm not a fanboy of this. I played Session, I could see good and bad points. I played this, I could see good and bad points. I stuck with both of them and I got used to the bad things. I ignored the bad things, but they're still there. I'm not deluded. I'm not saying the bad graphics don't exist because I've got used to them. They still exist, and when someone arrives here that hasn't got used to them yet, they're quite jarring. You know, the crazy gravity still exists. It doesn't bother me anymore because I've absolutely habitualised my mind to it. I've got used to it. I quite like it now. But when someone comes into here for the first time, it's fucking terrible. It's shockingly bad. It's like, how do people play this mess? That's what it's like. When you land on this game and you go and do some tricks, you're thinking, what the fuck's going on? Where's all this helium come from? You know, that's what it's like. But in a really short amount of time, you get used to it. So yeah, to round up this video, I will say, if you hate this game, give it some time. You'll bloody love it in about 3 days. You'll feel like you've had your money's worth. You'll play it loads. You've got a little bit of chill time, and this is going to be your go-to. I mean, look at this, right? Go in my games and apps, and I've got me chill games, and right in here, all my little games that are nice and relaxing, and I love playing all of these games. Nice and easy, haven't got to think about it. And we've got in here Skater XL, and we've got Session. I want to get rid of that because it was a bag of wank. I liked it for about 5 minutes, but it's very, very childish. I've actually got rid of the game, so it shouldn't still be in here anyway. But yeah, I love this snooker game. It's nice and relaxing. I like all of these games. The pinball game, pretty much every table they've got on there, it's just nice and relaxing to play. It's my chill out and don't think about it list of games. I love Hexit. It was brilliant on the original, on the 360. But yeah, Skater XL has found its way into my chill selection of games, because I'm going to keep on coming in here and just having a little bit of a skate. I'm not taking session out because it's exactly the same. I love doing that, and every once in a while I'll have a little bit of a game of poker. You know what I'm saying? These are games that are just nice, really nice. Now, I mean, you might have played this and fucking hated it and thought, I want my money back at what's going on with this mess, but give it 3 days and you'll be pinning this game just like I did, and you'll be loving it. You really will. And at that point, you'll think to yourself, I have got my money's worth. I'm glad I bought it. I really am glad I bought it. And I want to get you to that point. I want to help you to get to the point where you're very frustrated, you're really disappointed, which was me on day one. I loaded it up and I was just like, what a fucking mess. I am very, very disappointed. I uploaded a video on my first reaction. It was a first look video. I always upload first look videos. It's like an unboxing. I boot up the game, I tell you what I think, okay? It's as simple as that. What I normally do then is I continue playing the game. If I liked it, if it was absolute gash, I'm not going to play it again. But what normally happens is, whether I liked it or not, I'll carry on playing it. I'll put in a few hours, I'll give it a chance, I'll learn its nuances, I'll get used to it. Then I'll put up another video and I'll say, this is what I think about it now. I haven't got any allegiance to any one thing or another. I'm not a fanboy of any one thing. I'm not a hater of anything. I just tell you what it feels like to me and what it will probably feel like to you if you're doing the same thing as me. You bought it, you don't know what it's going to be like, you're jumping down at first look and you go, oh fuck, this is shit and I ain't going to be able to get a refund. That was my experience. That's going to be other people's experience as well. Then I'll play it for a while, I'll come back in, I'll bung up another video and I'll tell you, I've played it for a while, this is what I think now. You know, this is what I think that's good, this is what I think that's bad, this is why I think those things, this is how I feel that this game compares to other options that are out there for you. You know, I don't care if those other options came from a AAA studio with a shitload of money. I don't care if those other options are just a little indie game that one guy made by himself in his bedroom. I don't care. Right? I'm just saying, as a gamer, this is the sort of experience you'll have. If you stick with it, this is the sort of experience you'll have. And if you play this other game instead that's a little bit similar, this is the sort of experience you'll have. I think that's fair. I think doing that is a lot more helpful to people than just being a fucking deluded fanboy and rah, this is brilliant and it's perfect and it's a simulator and anyone who says otherwise is wrong, right? That's just fucking ridiculous, man. It really is. It doesn't help anyone. It's total bollocks and it's just a load of kids squabbling amongst themselves in the comments. Most of the comments that have been on this have been a little bit of that, a little bit of fanboyism going on, where you just can't see what's wrong with it. You've got used to it, you love it now. You can't see what's wrong with it for the people that are new to it. So you're not saying to those people, yeah, I know it's shit. I know it's a bit arcadey and the gravity's way off and the graphics are shit. I know all that, but I'll tell you what, stick with it, because in a couple of days you'll fucking love it. It's like, that wasn't the gist of the comments. The gist of the comments were, you're wrong, you can't skateboard, you don't know anything, you're a fucking twat, you're rah. That was the gist of the comments, and that doesn't help anyone, right? If someone's not enjoying the experience of the game, for valid reasons. I didn't want to not enjoy it. I didn't want to do a first look video and be disappointed. It wasn't my intention to slate the game. I absolutely really wanted to enjoy it, but when I got on the game there was nothing to enjoy. I had to adjust and get used to it. And after I did, I do enjoy it. So I'm making a video telling you why I enjoy it. But I ain't going to stop putting up first look videos, just like people won't stop putting up unboxing videos. A first look is like an unboxing of a game. That's what it's like. It's like, here it is, I ain't seen it yet, come with me and we'll enjoy this together. Might be good, might be bad, we'll see what happens. Here we go. That's what a first look video is. It ain't, right, I've done 200 hours, here's an a review of all the things that are good, all the things that are bad, all the things that you have to get used to, all the things that you will forgive after some time. That comes later. But anyway, there we go, guys. To round up and stop talking, because I always talk too much, I'll say, if you don't love this yet, you most certainly will if you give it a bit more time. You'll bloody love it after you've given it a bit more time. But the game is not going to change. I mean, it will do if they do an update, but updates aside, the game doesn't change, but you do. I hated it. I was very disappointed. I wanted a refund when I initially got in here. But I changed. I got used to it. I started to turn a blind eye to a few little things here and there. My brain habitualized to the crazy moon physics. And once all those things had happened, which happened to every single, but we're all human, that's the way your mind works, it's going to happen to you as well. Once those things have happened, it'll only take a couple of days, and at that point, you're going to have an enjoyable experience playing this, and you will feel like you've got your money's worth. And won't that be nice? If you currently hate it, and you feel like you've been ripped off, wouldn't it be much better if you can move yourself to a position where you actually love it and you feel like you've bought a decent game and you feel like you've got your money's worth? I'd much rather be in that second camp. I'd much rather think, I'm glad I bought that game, I'm going to pop it on for a couple of hours and I'm going to enjoy playing it. I wished all my games felt like that. Unfortunately, you buy some games, you play them for, you know, as long as you can bear, and they're still shit. They're still absolutely shit. But that's not happened with this one, which is really good. So I played it. I was disappointed. I felt like I'd been ripped off. I was considering getting a refund. I stuck it out. I always do. I always come back and give it a few more hours. Always. I always give it a chance because I know that this happens. I know that's the way we are. It's the way your mind works. So I gave it a bit more time. I kept sticking at it. I wasn't enjoying it. It slowly got a bit better and a bit better. It was nothing to do with not being able to play it, okay? I didn't come from EA onto this. I came from Session, which is really similar. I've got two sticks, they represent my feet. I'd already got used to that a little bit. I weren't good, and you could see my skateboarding was shit, but the reason that I was not enjoying the game was nothing to do with it's got new controls and I can't use them. And a lot of people were like, the only reason you're hating on it, which I wasn't, I was just giving my opinion. A lot of people saying the only reason you're hating on it is because you can't use the controls. This ain't Tony Hawk's. And I was getting a lot of flack from people saying exactly that. It weren't anything to do with that. It was to do with the graphic looks shit and the gravity's really off and various other things in the game that are still exactly the same. It was nothing to do with it's hard to skateboard. It's actually really fucking easy. It's a damn sight easier than Session. And I've now got used to these controls and I love them on both games. But when I first come in here, I knew the controls were, you know, left foot, left stick, right stick. I knew how to do that a little bit. I'd practice with it a little bit on Session. What you do on Session translates to this game really well. Because on Session you do an ollie like this, and on here you can do the same thing and it does an ollie. The only thing that doesn't translate from Session to this is the switch stance, and it's easier on here by a long way. But coming from Session to this really ain't a problem. It's not a problem at all. The hard thing is coming from EA to this or Session and learning this bit. That's the hardest bit. Trying to get your brain to do turning left and right with these bloody triggers instead of using the left stick. As soon as you've got that, then both this and Session suddenly click and you really like the controls. But yeah, it's a real step up. It really is a step up. So if you're looking for an experience that is a very rewarding experience of skateboarding, putting down a few lines and maybe putting a video montage up, this is that experience. And Session is that experience as well. But this is a lot more beginner friendly. You'll be able to do that, what you want to do a good line, make it look good, get a video montage of it. You'll be able to do that on this game very quickly. All you got to do is get used to the controls that ain't Skate. You'll be able to do that on Skate, but it takes a little bit longer because it is a bit more difficult and the margin of error is really, really tiny. But both of the games give you that sensation of doing a line, popping a few tricks here and there. It feels really bloody good. And you video it and it feels pretty fucking amazing. Now I've dug into the video editor on Session quite a lot. It's really, really good. It enables you to do a lot of fiddling around with the camera and zooming from one shot to another. The editor on this is really basic. It's not very good. But I gather from the guys that have got this on PC that there is a mod on the video editing bit that adds loads and loads of stuff that puts it way above Session. It sounds fucking awesome, like fisheye and different moving cameras and, you know, effects, and so it sounds brilliant. And I really hope that mod comes to the console version. I mean, right now on Session you can do a video of your thing, and it's finished, it's polished, it looks good, and you could bung it up on YouTube and you'd have a lovely skate montage. On this game, I think what you'd probably have to do is capture the footage that you're doing while you've got your replay playing, and actually have like your tripod camera and move around with your fingers, and then kind of save a little bit, and then save another little bit, save another little bit, and then get yourself an iMovie or whatever it is on Windows, and put that together into a video montage. You're going to have to post-edit, you absolutely are. It's like you can't stick like, you know, a tripod camera down and get the beginning of your line and pan around and watch it, and then jump over to another tripod camera and things like that. I mean, I really tried to do that, and it didn't appear that that was a possibility. But obviously, from what the guys have said that have got this on PC, and I'm very jealous of you guys, it sounds like your camera options, your video recording, your montage, it sounds fucking awesome. I hope that comes on this, I really do, it sounds brilliant. But at the moment, if you're only on Xbox and you want to do a video montage from Session, you've got everything you need. Do the montage, watch the replay, save it, bung it on YouTube, you're good to go. On this game, you are going to have to do your montage in lots of little tiny bits, you know, save them all to your computer, and then you're going to have to post edit, then you're going to have to bung it up onto YouTube. But it just, what they've given you, the basic bones of what they're giving you, it's then enough. It's not enough. There's a lot of stuff you can't do that you really want to do, like different angles, jumping from one camera to another. It doesn't really give you that flexibility in the same way that that Session does. There's a lot of customizability in there in Session, which is really quite nice. And I kind of really like that thing where you go to the apartment. It's clunky as fuck, it's horrible to actually move around the menus. The UI doesn't work very well, but I like the way that you can sort of sit in your apartment. You're like, oh, I'll pop to my closet and get you know, new clothes. You got a little workbench where you can fiddle with your board and change your grip tape or your wheels, whatever. It's a real nice little touch, that is. You can sit on your couch and watch your telly with your replays. You can go on your computer and do your montages. That's a really fucking good little way of incorporating what in most games is just a menu. I mean, on this game, it's just a menu. You just go in here and you select things from the menu. It's like you go on replay or you go on character. On that game, you go into your apartment and you sit down on your computer and you do all the stuff that's in here, or you sit down on your couch and watch your telly, or you go over to your closet and have a look through your clothes, or you go over to your workbench and you start fiddling with your board. Really nice little touch. I like that a lot. I really do. I like that I've got an apartment. It's just nice. Anyway, guys, there we go. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. I would like people to love Skater XL and love Session. Okay, that's my goal with this video and the ones that I put up in the future. Whether they're a video about this game, video about Session, I would very much like that all skateboarders or gamers that play any skateboarding game, that you feel like you've got your money's worth and you really enjoy playing these games. I absolutely know that the initial reaction to this game for a lot of people isn't that, it's just disappointment. And I also know that the initial reaction to a lot of people on Session isn't that either, it's frustration. But if you get past the disappointment and frustration, you get to a point where both games are really fucking good. So let's try and get all these people who are arguing in the comments to that point where they can say, yeah, both games are brilliant, I'm really glad that we've got them. They both do different things, but I'm really enjoying playing both. Right, see you next time, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.